This might look scary, but this is actually the best case scenario. Welcome back, everybody, and welcome to the new viewers. My name is Katie, and I am Bleach Daddy, and here I have a client who's had 5 years of professional salon coloring only on her roots every 2 months, and that is 2.5 months of growth. Look at how fast her roots grow. So today she's told me she wants to get rid of the black and she wants to go to more of a chocolate brown. She wants to have some balayage highlights and she wants to have a bit of a root drop. So I said to her, we're only really going to be able to remove the black and try to balance you out as much as possible today. The balayaging and root drop we may have to do another day. And she was totally fine with that. So she said, let's just get to something that's wearable for the weekend and we will see what we can do for our next appointment. So I'm starting her off with Schwarzkopf Bond Enforcing Color Remover, and I've mixed it according to the instructions with 20 volume developer in the Royal line. And because she has so much hair, I ended up using 5 packets for her service, which is a ton of color remover. And the way I like to apply this is I always like to use a back bib, especially for ultra long hair like this, because like look at how long and thick her hair is. And I like to separate it into workable sections using multiple clips so that I don't make sections really tangly and dirty, because this is a product that you kind of have to apply fast and move fast with because it doesn't have a super long processing time and you want things to be even. So what I'm also using here is I'm using the Big Papa foils by Framar, and those are really helpful for just kind of keeping things clean because again, color corrections are very messy days and I want to prevent as much as possible getting color all over her and all over the place. So things like the back bib and the Big Papa foils are just super helpful for me to keep everything neat because again, my hands are just covered with product all day. I'm touching everything all over the place and I don't want to ruin her clothing or get unnecessary color all over the place. And yeah, these kind of things help. So what I'm doing here is I am applying the color remover, which is a bleach based color remover. It's still gonna have some lift to it. And I'm applying it even where I see her grays. Those are kind of a little bit of a guideline for me to see where her natural regrowth is because her color that she's been getting done by her previous stylist has been so well applied and so well formulated that I can't even tell in the areas that she doesn't have grays what's her natural and what's not. So credit where it's due to that stylist. So I'm applying a little bit further up onto the scalp, closer towards the scalp than would be probably considered necessary, but I don't want to miss any areas with this color remover. Now I'm incubating the hair and I am applying a little bit of warm air in the area, not direct heat. I've just got my dryer on low and I'm trying to warm up the air around her just for a couple of minutes because it's pretty cold in the salon today and cold air stops the process for things that have bleach in them. So I wanted to make sure that her process keeps going, but very gently. And then after that had been on for a few minutes, I just took off the dryer and I put a towel over her to keep her incubated and warm. And I let her sit for, I think, like 30 to 40 minutes here. And after that was done, I wanted to check all the pieces to see what kind of lift we got and then reevaluate from there what we were going to do next. So I decided to do something that I don't actually ever do, and that's applying bleach on top of this how it is already. So it's not something super recommended, I think, probably for good reason, but everything went totally fine today. So I'm not saying to not do it. I'm not saying to do it. I'm just saying this is what I did. The color remover so far has worked very well, and she's lifted to probably a level 5, maybe a level 6, but I want her to be lifted to like a 7, 8 if possible. And our whole goal today is to remove the darkness and get her as light as possible so we can deepen her down, add low lights and maybe even highlights from wherever we get to. So this is overall what she looked like. And I feel like we're getting there. Everything is lifting pretty evenly considering 5 years of color application. And I applied from the back first towards the front, and I'm gonna apply my bleach in a different way. So let's talk about my bleach mixture. I am mixing up Blonde Me and 20 volume developer, and I'm mixing a really large bowl of this, honestly, all at once. And I'm adding in violet additive, which just honestly helps to fight a little bit more of those orange and red pigments. and mixing that in is just super satisfying to look at. So the way I'm applying this is I'm applying the front first, which most people probably wouldn't agree with, but the front didn't have as much lift as the back because the front didn't go in as long as the back did. The back went in first and it had more heat, so it lifted up a little bit more and a little more evenly. So I'm trying to get the front to have that benefit now where I put that in first and then I'm working my way towards the back. And that's one of the things that really, really worked out for me today is to do step one, which is apply the color remover in one way, and then step two, apply the bleach in the opposite way, because then everything ends up evening out really well. And as you guys are going to see, I'm just really saturating it on, using my hands to work it through the hair. This isn't too special of an application. I'm also trying to make sure that, again, I get closer up to the roots than I think I need to go, because I would rather deal with lifting some virgin root and having some yellow tones than not going far up enough and having a black band of permanent dye that's still in there that has to be removed, doing this entire part one and part two all over again in order to get rid of it. Now, my client knows that with the amount of time that we had today, there was only so much we could actually do with our service. We're not able to get her to her perfect end result yet. That will be next time. And I told her, at the end of your color correction appointment, what you're supposed to see is still something that you can wear outside and wear to functions and be comfortable in. But it's going to be the worst version of what you want. Every time we're going to get closer and closer and closer to what you want in the end. But a color correction is just that. It's me correcting the hair. We're not going to have a perfect result, especially with our time and expenses budget that we had to fit everything into today. So I said, let's just work as much as we can to get this to closer to where we want to be, and we will do those fine details once we've seen this in your hair for a week or two and we've seen how everything is in different lightings and how it is for styling, and if there's any adjustments you want to make on it. But overall, our main goal is to get light. So you guys will see the processes that I'm doing, you might think are a little bit too light for getting to like a chocolate / caramel brown. But overall, I'd rather lift a little on the lighter side and be able to drop down a low light and a root shadow than to not lift light enough. So here we are after she's processed for a while and it's looking fantastic. And I know this might look really scary to a lot of viewers, but this is a really beautiful lift. It is something that shows how good the previous stylist was at applying her root color without overlapping, because we have the same color from pretty much the roots down to the ends. Like, look at how beautiful and pure lifted those ends are. If the previous stylist had gone over her ends with color multiple times over, those ends would be dark red to black still. So let's talk about our next step here. This is where the real color correcting comes in. Now that I've evened out my canvas, I can start lifting up her natural root with a color and kind of prefacing on what color we want to use on her hair in the future. Now, this color I used on her is a permanent color, and I've used it with 30 volume developer to get a ton of lift. And it is 30 grams of 7-24, which is a level 7, and it's got like almost like a navy tone and a beige tone. 10 grams of 6-31, which is level 6 green blue, and then 20 grams of 7-1, which is level 7 blue, and then 15 grams of 7-00. And that's just for some balance and hold in there, because we don't want to go over the top with our green and blue pigments, but I also don't want to stain any of those yellow areas green or blue. So having that 00, which is a natural, like a brown color, that helps with making sure that any areas that this color might touch won't go green or blue. So this is going to help lift up her root as much as possible. And again, I'd rather overlift the root and then deepen it down back after, rather than to have a root color that she doesn't like that isn't light enough. Overall, I think that this root could have been a little bit deeper, and that would have been totally fine. But again, still happy with how this ended up, because she is totally able to, in a week or two, come down to the salon again. We will do a root shadow and maybe at more of a solid level 6 instead of a level 7. and that will just add some depth and softness to her root. And I would probably root shadow it as well to give her more of that balayage effect. But right now, we're just trying to lift her roots and see what potential formula we could use for the future and tweak it from there. This is what it looks like applied. And now I'm just kind of looking through the rest of the hair and thinking, what am I going to formulate for our highlights and our lowlights? Because I don't want to do bleach highlights today. We want to keep her hair as healthy as possible, but we still want it to be like pretty dimensional. And if we were to just put one solid color all over this, if there's any imperfections in the hair, they're going to be more noticeable. So let's start with our highlights today and how I'm going to be applying them. So what I'd like to preface here is I'm showing only one side so that I don't waste a whole bunch of film time for you guys to not see what I'm doing on the other side. But so you guys can see my placement for my light color versus my dark. So everything in this segment right here is going to be all of the highlights, which is the light color. What I'm using for my formula today is Igora Royal 9-24, which is a blue beige base again, because this hair is pretty golden orangey. And I want to get a little bit more lift out of this hair, maybe one extra level to make her a level 8. And I'm using quite a cool tone and some beige so that I can control the tone as we lift, but we still want to have a warm result. So I know that her hair is not going to lift to a level 9 because right now it's like a pretty golden orangey level 7. That's totally okay with me. I'm trying to get her to a warm level 8. So using a 10 and 20 volume developer pushes her hair just a little bit without giving it a crazy amount of ammonia and like blasting open that cuticle. And using a very ashy color that normally would probably turn someone's hair a little bit on the blue side is going to be just enough color to correct as it lifts and keep her on the warmer caramel side. So yeah, we didn't want to have any of those kind of muddy, ashy tones that, when you mix them with warm tones, everything just kind of looks like swampy mud water. It's not a good look. So the way that I'm applying these highlights is I'm doing pretty chunky highlights. And that's because my goal colors are going to be in a level 7 and like in a level 8. There's going to be a very, very subtle contrast between the two colors anyways. So I want to have chunky pieces, and I'm doing more highlights than lowlights. So what you're seeing go into the foil is more of the hair in most sections, with the exception of this section right here. So this section is the apex of the head, and I find that I like to have more low light than highlight in pieces like this typically. So the section that I just weaved out, that's going to stay behind and become the low light because it creates a little bit more of that rooty teardrop softness that I want to see in the apex of the head. And we didn't have time to do this extra step, but had we had the extra time today, and as well as if my client's scalp could handle it, which she was saying she was feeling a little tingly, a little itchy on her scalp near the end of the day, and I said, I don't want to push your scalp, further than we need to. So we would have done a smudged root drop had her scalp been feeling really good, but she does say that she has a little bit of a tender scalp when she gets her hair colored anyways, and I didn't want to irritate it and cause, any kind of dermatitis or allergic reaction or anything. And it's, again, her hair ended up being nice and wearable enough for the weekend so she can come see me another time and we can do that root smudge. But overall, I put in mostly highlights. Like when I took each of my sections, I weaved in the majority of the hair would be for the highlight, because again, I'd rather things be too light than to be too dark, because I can always add in low lights easily, and those things are just little details. Any sections that I saw that looked a little more on the red side, I also made sure to weave out. And all of my weaves here, it might look a little bit, it might be hard to see honestly, but my main goal is to make sure that there is symmetry on either side of the parting, because I'm doing a mohawk section here. So I'm trying to make sure that I have the same amount of weaves and similar sizes of weaves on either side of the parting to create a very symmetrical look. But again, we have very, very low contrast between this level 7 low light and this level 8 highlight. So overall, everything ends up blending together really beautifully, and she has some dimension and contrast, but it's not over the top. But you always want to be careful about your application anyways for things like this. Something else that I did with my application that I'm really happy with today is, even though main photo that she used for her inspo had a small money piece. I chose to make a large money piece. And again, that's because I have such low contrast in the two colors that I am using today. The girl in the photo probably had more like a level 6 root and a couple of low lights in there that were probably around a level 6, which is something that we'll put in next time. But overall, having this larger money piece didn't end up looking like a large chunky money piece. It just gave her that little subtle brightness around the face that ended up making that nice impact without it looking like a huge over the top done chunk. Because I mean, we've all seen it where we did money pieces a few years ago and they were new on, like, the trends, and people went really overboard with money pieces and ended up with a big bleached out chunk in the front and then balayage everywhere else. It was so disjointed and crazy looking, and I don't want to have my clients leave with something like that unless they specifically ask for it. Even though it's not my favorite look, I'll do whatever my clients want because, again, it's their hair. But overall, this is what I did with my client's hair. And from that apex piece towards the front, I made sure that each foil had more and more and more of the highlight in it coming towards the front. So we had that softer effect of having a little bit deeper and darker at the back top towards something a little bit brighter, closer to the money piece. And then the money piece is just one big chunk. There's no weaves. So again, that gives her that contrast that you want to see between her highlights and her lowlights, in quotations, because they're not really lowlights and highlights. They're like color lights. I don't know what to call them. But again, this is me toning with permanent color, and permanent color toning is what I chose to do today for a very specific reason. I wanted to see some lift and a lot of color balancing and control, and I wanted to see the hair color really stick in and stay in. And because her hair has been all bleached and lifted, I'm not worried about having to only use a toner that's semi-permanent. And I would only use a toner that's semi-permanent on someone who has still some of their natural hair in between their highlights, because I don't want to lift up and expose the warmth in their natural hair and create orange low lights in between their highlights. So if you haven't used permanent color to tone yet and you're not sure when to use it, this would be the case that you would use it. So let's discuss my low light formula. My lowlights is like a mix between a 7-1 and a 7-4, and it's 60 grams of 7-1 and 30 grams of 7-4. And what I really like about the 4 series in Schwarzkopf is it's very pinky purpley. It's like very, very pearly and a very cool toned beige. And I know it does have some natural and some warm in there, but I find it's more on the cool side, especially in these royal colors. So I like using it for colors like this where I'm trying to neutralize and balance without going crazy over the edge with my ashy tones. So that 7-1 has blue tones in it to help fight against the orange, and the 7-4 has a mix of warm and mostly cool tones in there to help balance and keep things looking more beigey and more chocolatey, I guess, for our overall result, which is exactly what we wanted. Again, we want to stay right in the middle of the road, lift us up nice and light, but still provide dimension and contrast, so that we have something that doesn't look flat and one-dimensional while we're waiting for the time for our next appointment. So we processed her for 40 minutes according to the instructions, allowed that color to fully get into the hair. We washed her and blow dried her. And this is why we don't take photos in the winter, because our sun set and we lost our light of day. But this is overall what we got for her. We gave her a haircut as well and gave her a quick blow dry because she was ready to go home to her babies. And overall, I'm pretty happy with this result. It's not perfect, and it won't be, because again, color correction, not color perfection. But this is the overall result, and I'm quite happy with this. And she was so, so happy to see that her hair did get to like the level she wanted, or even a little higher. So we have a lot of flexibility with where we want to go from here. So yeah, I know it sounds so ridiculous for me to say. It looks way better in person. The colors reflect so much better in person, and it looks a lot more orangey in the camera here than it does in real life. But I'm not the world's best photographer or videographer, and when the sun sets and you're in a dark salon, it's hard to really capture those true colors that are on there in your camera. Either way, I I think this was great. I'm so happy with the result. I want to know what you guys think about this result and if you've learned anything about color corrections and potentially even using permanent colors to tone hair. Let me know in the comments below. I'd love to hear from you guys. And if you want to support my channel, please remember to like and subscribe and share this with any hairdresser friends that you know that might need a little bit of help with color corrections or blonding or anything else to do with hair coloring services. Thank you guys so much. I hope you have a lovely afternoon or evening wherever you are, and be safe out there.